Hi everyone and welcome to the Warhammer podcast. We're your hosts Jack
and Dan.
And today we're going to be looking at terrain. Dan, is Warhammer 40k's terrain too boring?
Yes, are we all taking the L with terrain? Top dad joke there.
Really good.
I think we need to talk about, has Warhammer terrain become too predictable? There's still a vast array of it out there, but L-shaped ruins are really dominating the battlefield, aren't they?
They are.
Are we becoming too reliant on that? I think we need to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, just ultimately yes.
Yeah, if we are, can we change it up without damaging game balance? That's the big question, I think.
That's a big one for me, because I feel like it is. We need to have some sort of guidelines to terrain.
Yeah.
Too much benefits melee, too little benefits shooting. So it's that balance. We need to find what works for everybody.
And before we do that, I think it's been a little while since either of us have played on something that isn't L-shaped, but you had a fantastic experience back end of last year, didn't you?
Really want to talk about this there, yeah. So I'm going to butcher the name.
Apocalypticon. Yes.
Hosted by a good friend, Scott.
Yes.
He put a lot of work into this, and I think that's what really made it shine. Like, the work that he put in the entire event was beautiful, but the terrain, when I seen it, was just absolutely incredible. There'll be some photos on my phone which I'll dig out, which I'll pop on screen just so you can see the level of detail that he went into. But it ranged from massive titans on fields to massive terrain bits, really highlighting the history of 40k is probably a really good way of putting it.
Yeah, because this was a narrative event, wasn't it, rather than competitive, which obviously gives you more scope. But Scott has a real eye for setting up a thematic board, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, there was I think there was 5 or 6 tables going on.
Yeah,
and each table had something different about it.
Nice.
So it wasn't just didn't just pretty print the same set 6 times.
Right,
and round it out. Each table had a theme and a reason, which I think is another good thing, because you look at these L-shaped tournament terrain, and again, look, it does what it needs to.
Yeah,
right?
we'll come on to it. There are definite benefits to that, but for did you feel like the terrain in this helped with your immersion, into this?
I mean, the first thing, again, you done it for a reason, and I can see why, but you walk through the doors, and the first table in front of you is I don't even know what it was called, but it was the biggest Titan that you can get.
Right.
And that was terrain / a playable model.
Oh, right.
And I was like, what on earth is that? And I was like, I'm not going against that. I've only got infantry. I'm like, my lethal hits might do well, but realistically, it was crazy.
Yeah.
But even on that, going to my table specifically, we had a Blackstone Fortress. A terrain piece, because you had to move around it because it was so big, but also it became a playable character.
I love that so much, yeah.
And again, just the effort that he was putting into it to see that, and to see it get played and have its own data card, and it was just nice. And again, there was on each table there was different terrain parts that interacted with each table as well. So just that, again, moving away from that cookie cut element kind of thing, it was this is what the Warhammer universe has to offer for a tabletop.
It feels almost cinematic, I guess, which is what you want from your narrative, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Just that each map was unique. Again, I don't think I've seen very much L-shaped terrain. Now, that might be because, again, this is a narrative event, so we're talking Titans. You can't get a Titan through L blocks.
No, fair enough.
So, you had to obviously adapt it, but at the same time, I think there was a Tyranid invasion going on one side or on another table that did have some L-shaped, but it wasn't the bog standard 5 pieces and then you connected the dots. It was 100 pieces that were all different and unique and such. So
nice.
It was well put on, and it was well thought out, I think is the best way of putting it.
Good. I think that's a brilliant example of how you can use terrain to really bring your games to life.
Absolutely.
Well, Scott is on as Apocalypticon. They are on Facebook. So go and find, just search Apocalypticon on Facebook and it'll come up. It's a brilliant event. It's held in Newcastle every November, I think it is.
Yeah.
Raises a lot of money for charities, so go and check it out.
Yes.
From my perspective, the last time I played on non-L-shaped terrain was Warhammer World, because I actually complained about it on this podcast, didn't I?
You did. But that's for a reason. I guess maybe for that one, maybe we set our expectations too high for the terrain at Warhammer World?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I mean, the two times I've interacted with GW was at Warhammer Fest when there wasn't enough terrain on the tables, and there was complaints on day one, and they put more on, and that was a tournament.
Yeah.
But this one was not a tournament. The second one was our friend Simon put on Rally Point Point, which again was another charity event, raised loads of money for mental health charity.
Yeah.
But again, GW. That's a long way of me getting around to the point that my 2 interactions with GW, and GW just doesn't put enough terrain on its tables. It wasn't that the terrain was. I was like, why aren't these L shapes?
Yeah.
It was like, I can't interact with this terrain in a good way to stop me being killed.
That's it, because you were bringing obviously Dark Eld armor,
yeah,
right?
very squishy elves,
squishy army. So you had to have that line of sight blocking. Basically, you had to have it. Otherwise, the game would have been done in turn 1, turn 2.
That was what happened. Is we looked at the setup of the terrain, and like I'm quite fast. I can get, and he's quite fast. Whoever wins the roll off is going to hurt the other person. That's exactly how it went. Yeah. So I'm not going to rerun that because we've done a whole other video on Warhammer World. To go and watch that if you want. The only other thing I thought was it's probably my naivety because I've never been to Warhammer World before, but I thought all the tables were themed.
Yeah, me too.
So there's like the front few have got these fantastic board setups and they're beautiful.
I was going to say, let's reiterate that they are amazing.
Yeah, stunning.
Each of them again is unique, which is amazing. So the replayability of going to Warhammer World to play on each of the different tables is kind of what you want to do.
And but I mean, to me, maybe it's because like we're massive 40k nerds, but it's like the Disneyland of Warhammer. And I expected, for Disneyland of Warhammer, I expected all the tables to be themes. Maybe I'm asking too much of GW. But is there a compromise that they could have there where you have like a box of themed terrain and it goes on each table? Yeah. So,
I mean, surely they've got enough of it, right?
You would like to think so.
Like they've been going for how many
40 odd years now. Yeah, 40 years.
They've definitely got some themed in there.
Yeah.
So it was strange how they've just like, again, only 3 of them, and there was like, I think it was like 50 tables or something.
Yeah,
like that,
something like that. It's quite a lot of tables. So there's if you're going to do themed terrain, do it right. GW, I guess is what I'm saying.
I mean, obviously we've talked about like they were our last 2 ones. I remember my first time playing Warhammer. You would just get your round table that you've got at home.
Yeah, just whatever you've got. Yeah,
you'd grab, I don't know, some cups, some plates. Be like, is this L-shaped? Nah, it doesn't matter. No. Let's put on what I've got and let's just make some
some tins out of the kitchen cupboard and some books or something.
That's when Warhammer was Warhammer. Back in the good old days.
This is it, because a part of this is, and we'll come on to this, but it's like, are we being a bit too spoiled and have we kind of lost our imagination? Because when you're a kid, you will play with unpainted or part painted models with, cereal box make do terrain and you still have the most immersive experience and you somewhere between teenagers and now we've lost that spark. It's
definitely an age thing. I think it's definitely
it must be.
I
I need a certain level of immersion for me to feel immersed. Like I can't do it all by myself anymore.
It's got to be it's all got to be painted. It's all got to be. Got to have the battle mat. Got to have the unique dice.
I mean,
got to have it all.
Does playing with ruins all the time bother you? Like, because that's 99% of our gaming, isn't it?
It is. It's a. When I seen that question, I was straight thinking to myself, well, like for me, I'm not too bothered by it because I get why, and I think that's the thing. Like I would look again going to the event with Scott. It was amazing because again the terrain was lovely and it was a breath of fresh air when it came to terrain.
Yeah.
Do I get bothered with the L terrain? No, because I remember going to some friends' houses and I don't know, they had like a massive firing line and being like, oh, I've only got these 3 bits of terrain.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And I'm like, oh, like, okay, I'm just going to trot off the table turn 1 to 2. And that wasn't fun for me. I'd spent time making my models, building them and such. So going to the same terrain over and over again might sound boring, but it still keeps the game fair in my eyes.
It really does, and I think a lot of it can depend on how you play. If we're not like super sweats top competitive players, but we like to go to events. So if you and me are rolling dice, we are picking a UK TC terrain pack.
Yeah.
So we're playing as if it was a competitive game because it's practice. And I think that to me makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just occasionally where you just like you saying, it's just nice to be able to do something different once in a while.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that there was something I was going to mention in the pros section, but I'll mention it now because it makes more sense. That having the section where like what type of terrain you're going to be playing on also still helps with the balance, if that makes sense. So if you're going to be playing with the UTC terrain pieces, you know what to expect and you know how the game will flow in a way. if you turn up to an event that doesn't use UTC and has maybe less or even more terrain, you're not going to be used to playing on that terrain.
Yes.
So you might have built your army with a certain amount of movement to be like, oh, right, cool. I've got a few battle plans in my head. I'm going to stage turn 1 by moving my units, their specific 8-inch move to this unit. And then turn 2, I'm going to then do this.
So I think we touched on this the other week, but this happened to some of the Vanguard Tactics guys. I think it was James Hobbs, and he was saying that they were used to playing on UKTC terrain, and they went to the LVO, which plays on GW terrain layouts, which are a bit more sparse.
Yeah.
And they'd worked out for the melee armies they couldn't get them their units up to the next terrain piece.
Yeah.
So you were going to be out there in the wind and getting shot at.
Yeah. So again, you know your rules, you know your opponent's rules, you know the core rules, but if the terrain changes, someone who's been playing on that terrain a lot longer than you will have a massive unfair balance.
It's a huge advantage if you know the terrain. And likewise, if somebody came over from the States and played on like came to the Northeast Open or tournament or something, played against us, in theory we'd have an advantage on them if because they wouldn't be aware of how restrictive the firing lanes are or how easy it is to stage.
So that's another reason why I guess I'm not so bothered about it, because I like the element of balance. Now again, actually, no, we'll talk about that a bit later, but about the creativity side of things. But
good.
For me, it definitely is. It definitely doesn't bother me. But what about you, Dan?
I mean, it doesn't necessarily, but I just feel like I might be getting my tinfoil hat in here, but I feel a little bit suspicious about how it's gone, because even 5 years ago, GW used to make a lot more varied terrain. Yes. So if you think about the 9th edition starter set, that came with like pipes as well as like ruins. There was the Sector Mechanica stuff in 9th. So you had this lots of Gothic industrial stuff. There was big platforms, lots of ladders. There was height variation. And all of that interesting terrain it still kind of exists, but it's going to kill team.
It has exactly. Yes, I love that like smaller-esque uppy downy kind of style.
Bit of verticality to it. It's nice, isn't it?
You're having to get advantage points. Get in the right places, because again, if everyone's on the same level, well, it kind of makes sense. And even 40K does have the different some terrain bits do have a second level.
The bigger ruins will have one first and second stories.
But realistically, I don't see many people use them. They might throw a scout up there with obviously snipers and whatnot. But realistically, not a lot of people do that anymore, because the benefit is really staying on the ground floor because you can't see through. So it's just better.
And I mean, GW still makes all of this terrain, but I think partly what's driven this edition's reliance on L-shaped ruins is because they are dominant in the rules of this rule set. So if we went back to 9th, like there's terrain that I own now, which you can use in 10th, but you don't. So I've got the Gala Dark terrain, I've got the loads of Sector Mechanica stuff. I've got craters. I sound like an old man here, but what happened to craters? Craters and trees.
Like, you were back in Dawn of War, mate, when they had the craters and you got benefit live cover and such from it.
I love me a crater, and I used to have them on every battlefield in 9th.
Yeah, because if you were inside of it, you got benefit live cover and such.
You never see them in 10th. They've just
pulled it because it was actually, correct me if I'm wrong here, definitely light terrain. Was there heavy terrain?
There was light and heavy cover, like there was a light and dense cover, because
+1, +2, something like that.
You could. There was things like, and there was differences. So trees, if you were shooting through them, it was -1 to hit. And then you and you could get there was different benefits of light and heavy. I think it was
something like that. There,
Tell us if we're wrong in the comments, but or explain it. But
they've just ripped that out of it. So now it's just a flat. If you are not fully visible, it's minus.
But it's very easy to get cover in this edition. But it does. I definitely think they have designed the rule set more for the terrain, more for the tournament scene, and the tournament scene uses L-shaped ruins, doesn't it? So I mean, one apologies, I can't remember your name, but one viewer in our feedback said when we were asking about this, referred to the L-shaped ruin layouts as a paintball arena, which I thought was quite funny. I never thought about that, but it is kind of like that, isn't it?
I like it.
So let us know your thoughts in the comments as well. And we also ran a poll. Which I've forgotten to put in the script.
I've also forgotten to put it. I've completely forgot about that.
Yes, so I think should we whack that on the screen?
Whack it on screen there, Dan.
Yeah. So the poll was basically: are you happy with L-shaped ruins, or would you like more variety? And a massive 39% of you said L-shaped ruins help keep the game balanced. So the opposite was 61% of you said that L-shaped ruins are boring. So nearly 2 to 1 in favour of L-shaped ruins being boring is pretty comprehensive.
it makes sense as well. Everyone was saying it is literally just like it's cookie cut, it's boring, it's the same.
Yeah,
bland.
There was a surprising number of people that disliked them. Yeah, considering but that's why we ask these questions, because sometimes we get stuck in our own bubble where we're like, this is fine.
Yeah,
exactly. But then you ask the community, and the community says this is not fine.
It's probably worth mentioning as well. Obviously, we are in a small little bubble of a community where we've got access to, I guess, varied L-shaped content. So it's something that we've not talked about, but we've got like fully down terrain, which is pretty unique in terms of there's a Kickstarter that our friend had that 3D printed us some of it.
Yeah, I haven't got a set yet. I'm looking forward to getting some. Please, Dan.
Me too, Dan.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it. With the L-shaped stuff, you can get to the lots of variants. You can get third parties and stuff, and the foldy stuff is great because it doesn't take up too much room.
Exactly. Yes.
But speaking of L-shaped ruins, then let's get on to the pros and cons, shall we? Do you want to start us off on? Let's start on the positives.
On the positives. So again, I've already talked about before about just the advantages and keeping it balanced.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go too much more into that. But for me, you go to a tournament, right? And you've got L-shaped setups.
Yes.
When you go to a tournament, maybe a lot of people don't know, but you actually, before the game starts, you have to actually set up the terrain. So each game is different. So you have game one, and I always turn it a little bit earlier so I can set up the board.
Yeah.
So game one isn't so long, but when you get into game 2 and 3, they're back to back. So you move from one table to another, you immediately start having to set up that terrain. Having L-shaped terrain, for me anyways at least, makes it easier to set up the board. If you had those unique pieces, you might be like, where does this go kind of thing. Now, I might just be clutching at straws on this one, but for me, L-shaped ones, I just find easier to set up.
For terrains, I've said it again, for tournaments, it's definitely a big boon. Yeah. And I think because the maps, again, you can kind of learn the maps. So I think it was my second or third game I played at the Northeast Open was against a guy from Team Scotland called Ryan. Really lovely lad. Thanks for the game, Ryan. But he came over. I'd been there for about 10 minutes, struggling to set the terrain up because I'm an idiot and I can't measure it properly.
It happens to everyone.
And he just came along and went, well, if you do, he just went bum, 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 bum. And it was done because he played for Team Scotland. He's playing 40k multiple times a week, and he knew it. Like he could have done it with his eyes closed. I would love to do that one time with get an experienced tournament player and just blindfold them and say set the terrain up, because I bet you it wouldn't be that far off.
Yeah, like a little competition style. Yeah.
So I fully agree with you. I think on that respect that it just it's in a terrain environment, in a tournament environment. 3 times now. 3 times in a tournament environment. It's vital. You need it. So I fully agree with that.
I think again, if you introduce those elements of like terrains, I mean, I say that actually maybe this would have been nice to get like a tournament organizer to give their input on it. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, what do you have to do for all the L terrain? You've got to pack it up. Yeah. If you maybe there's like the L terrain helps slot them in together, so you can just easier.
That is also a massive. Yeah, you can fit more in a box basically.
Yeah, if you've got those unique pieces that are like massively tall, it's going to be an absolute nightmare for them to set up and pack away and store and stuff.
That's a really good point, actually, because you need a lot. I mean, if you're running a 100-man tournament, you need 50 sets of terrain. Yeah.
And you've got like one centerpiece, which is like this tall, and you're like...
Yeah, no, it's not going to work, is it?
Yeah, it's going to be super annoying. Good. But again, what about you for pros?
Yeah, I think it's a common language among players, like I said, because we play with them so much now and 10th is so geared towards them, everybody knows what they do and how to use them in that respect. I think it's affordable. You've got you can even make your own, corners of cardboard boxes and stuff. If you're just starting out, it's fairly easy to do. And I think there's lots of choice, as we touched on before. GW makes its own, which are super expensive but beautiful. I mean, they are, but expensive.
There's some amazing sets. I've referenced a few later with prices. I do want to talk about prices.
Good. But I mean, there's a load of third-party prints out there, that offer something different. You can usually get. For a lot of factions, you can get L-shaped terrain that is like specific to your faction. Not all factions, but you can get quite a few. And obviously there's the MDF as well. If you haven't got a lot of money and you're just getting started out, an MDF set is a really cheap and quick way to get the terrain you need on the board. So in that respect, I think there are definitely some positives to the L-shaped terrains, but there are some drawbacks.
There always is. And I think my things are very similar to what the comments were saying, is that it's boring. And you know what, Scott, if you are watching me, you've ruined it for me. The terrain that we had at the event was just too good. Now when I've came back to the L-shaped ones, I am literally looking at them. I'm like, I get why they're here, but they're the goddamn bone to look at.
I think once you've been spoiled like that and you've been truly like deeply immersed in a game through the terrain, and the terrain is used to tell a story, then it doesn't. Everything else feels a bit grey and dull.
It's just when you're playing on these theme boards and that are obviously not part of competitive play, it makes your army fit it better. You're like, oh, I'm here because it's Necron terrain. I've maybe just awoken from the Tomb World and I'm kind of invading the planet. And it makes sense. And it's like, oh, I'm here.
Not invading the planet, Jack. We're taking it back. It's our planet.
Of course.
Our planet.
We never lost it.
Get off our lawn.
Yeah. But exactly, like it makes sense. And then like most of these terrain ones are just ruins. And I get it. It's just buildings, right?
Yeah.
Like flat buildings. I guess I'm on a human world.
Oh, look, we're on an Imperial planet again.
Yeah. Or a lava planet, which also has buildings.
Yes.
Which
that was the one that somebody pointed out, which I never even thought about. Is like, you're playing on like a desert or an Arctic battle mat, or like you said, like a demonic lava battle mat or something, and it's still got ruins on it. Yeah. So
strong building material there, I guess.
I don't know what the Imperium's using to build these, but but I mean, I think can get a bit predictable. And as we talked about, the other drawback is there is distinct advantages for more as you get more experience playing on those tournament layouts. I got it right. I didn't say terrain.
There we go.
Yes,
take the win.
Yes, as you get more experience playing on those layouts, that can become terrain for advantage almost. Like if you're playing someone that's just starting out in that scene, or like when I played that guy Ryan, he was a phenomenal player. And he was able to, like, I put a bunch of stuff in Deep Strike, and he knew exactly the distances between the terrain pieces, was able to spread out and deny my Deep Strike and box me in, and it was game over.
You see, like, I respect that hustle. I respect but I also hate him. For me, I don't know what it is. Sorry for a little tangent. Whenever I get pre-measured, I'm done.
Yeah, you're in for a.
It doesn't.
It's not fun for you.
It doesn't even matter if he's not even He could be pre-measuring just to scare me.
I started doing it just to get in your head.
It works. It blaming works. I don't know why. But
I'm a little bit the same. I've got over it a bit now, but it's like everybody has an Achilles heel, and that's yours. It's like if you ever play Jack, just get your tape measure out and start pre-measuring. It's psychological warfare.
It's like you set up your models. Like I might place like a unit down, and they're like, so what's the distance of the 24. It's like, all right, great. Well, that's 24. Right. What's its movement? 10. Right. I'm going to put 34 away, and I'm like,
or they've got some fast. This unit's fast, and they're measuring to the middle of the board, and then measuring to your lines. You're like, what's he going to do with that? What's he doing with that?
Starts placing dice down. I'm like, this guy.
Oh, no. We're in trouble here.
Surrender. Turn one, surrender. Sorry, I was a little bit of a tangent there.
But no, that's very true. I think, and that's it. I think. On that note, should we talk about how do we feel that we've become as a hobby, or in our bubble meta, as you call it, have we become too reliant on L-shaped terrain? Do you think?
I think we are. Right. It's just ingrained in Warhammer now to have this terrain,
and it's been I think it's been nudged. We've been nudged that way by GW in the rule set, haven't we?
Absolutely. Again, you look at I want to talk about them in a bit more detail later, but we'll talk about each unit, each army has one or two faction specific terrain pieces. Like again, we've mentioned it. Necrons have the convergence of Dominion. Sisters have something really cool, which is the Saint Celestine statue.
Oh, it's beautiful.
That's really good. And the Tau have the Tau Tide Wall Shield Wall.
Oh, they're currently as this video is made, they're currently back on the GW website, website only on Warhammer.com. If you can find them. If you want to know why we don't like the Warhammer.com website, go and watch last week's video.
Yes.
But they are there. If you're a Tau player, go and check them out.
If you find them, let me know.
They are really nice set pieces.
Really good. But so basically, like, it's just like being too reliant. GW are kind of pushing us away from our own terrain to be like, no, don't use that. Saint Celestine, you don't want that girl. I'll get that gal out of here. So it just feels like, yes, we are becoming too more reliant, but we are being pushed towards it, is what I think
you've got another point here, which we've kind of touched on, but changing terrain can create imbalance, really, can't it? Which is a challenge.
Exactly. So again, what we mentioned before, like there has to be some sort of base level guideline on what each map will consist of.
Yeah.
I think is the main thing, because
you need to know before you write on. I mean, we're not saying that you should tailor your army lists for your opponents, because I don't think that's a good thing to do. You know, like, but. It is important, if you know that there is going to be a lot less terrain on the board, that you prepare for that.
Yeah, you build your list to accommodate.
You kind of have to, don't you?
Yeah, so like again, going into a different game without having the right set pieces, you're going to fail. Basically, you're going to have a bad game, and that's not what I want.
Yeah. I mean, none of us have got, unless you won the lottery or something. We've all, playing 40k is a luxury. It's not something we can do even as often as we want. Yeah. So it's important that you have a fun. You maximise the fun. The fun and fairness is a big part of fun, I think.
Absolutely. What about yourself?
Yeah, I do think we've been conditioned to feel it's vital for competitive play, and I mean. It's not. It's a bit of a dichotomy, because GW has kind of pushed us in this direction.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they still offer a very wide range of terrain on the website. So I went and had a look, as we just talked about the Tau stuff's there. The Hab blocks are there, which I really like. I don't know if they've just brought them back for a short period or something, but the Sector Mechanica stuff is there.
Yep.
They did recently. Was it the back end of 9th? I want to say, but they did that Frontiers where they did the lovely landing pad and the communications tower, the Vox antenna. Which came in a set. It was either early 10th or late 9th.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Passing
and there's loads of awesome Necromunda Zone Mortalis terrain that you can still get on there. Yeah. And that's all 40k compatible. Yeah. So GW, it's classic GW for me. On the one hand, they're saying, we've got all this terrain here. Come and buy it from us.
It's available. Why are you complaining for? Why are you making videos?
Well, you can't be salty about this. But then the rule set is also like, just use these L's,
Literally, take the L.
Take the L. It is. So I do think, we should, for casual narrative, we should definitely branch out more. I think, but it's also, I think it's important to say, like you touched on this before, is terrain takes up a lot of room.
Yes.
So it's actually quite hard to own more than one set of terrain.
Especially if you're bringing those models like the Tesseract Vault that we've talked about before, where it has a big hull or base, So like, again, if we change the terrain, we're going to have to change potentially the points involved in your army, because we can't bring a Tesseract Vault. So
no,
in a majority of games, because
in tournament terrain setups, you can't really bring something like a Tesseract Vault. If you want to bring that in so that you can have fun with your toys, we've got to change the terrain layout. But how does that impact the rest of the game?
Going back to a Baneblade as well, that's that struggles right now to get across the terrain we have. So if we're going to change the terrain, what are we going to change it to? We have to accommodate all the different armies, and there's a lot out there, if anyone hasn't noticed. A lot of units, so that's going to be quite hard. Yeah,
and I mean, there are people being creative with it. Like, there are some YouTubers that we'll come on to a bit later that are being really creative with terrain and showing us that it can be done. But how do you feel about its impact on that create? Because, I mean, essentially, the game is meant to be almost open world, telling stories with dice and models and terrain as well. Is it impacting creativity?
So again, this is where Scott has ruined me.
Right,
Where basically, yes, it's ruining the creativity. Like, I was semi-happy with the terrain layouts being L-shaped, and then went to this event, and it just opened my eyes to be like, well, where are the Necron-themed terrains? Where's the Tau-themed terrains? World Eaters, all that sort of jazz. Like, there should be more customization, more flavor, because again, look at the richness of 40k. There's so much history. There's so many worlds out there. Because even Imperial worlds, surely they'll have different styles between, the guard regiments to, the different guard regiments, like Kriegsmen versus Cadia.
I'm going to have different arcadical styles.
Yeah, because
that's a good point.
Krieg are all underground.
Yeah.
So, like, why isn't there like an underground kind of style for Kriegsmen?
Craig's Cadia's architectural style is just rubble.
Yeah. Well, it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
It's gone, isn't it? We're not even sorry. Come at us in the comments. Krieg all the way.
It's been a while since I had a dig at Cadia.
We've got to.
No, I fully agree with that. I think I never even considered that the Imperium, because even like Eldar. I mean, GW doesn't really do a lot of Eldar terrain at the moment, but it's always struggled a little bit with Eldar terrain. But Eldar, there's loads of, like, there's a spectrum of Eldar and how they live, and you'd expect different terrain out of that as well.
Craft worlds compared to, I guess,
the Exodites, like the dinosaur riding dudes, that they're almost like living very simple and humble lives, aren't they? Yes, you'd have different terrain.
Absolutely. So there's like, I feel like there's such a bountifulness of richness available to take inspiration from.
Yeah.
But they're not doing it. Maybe, I don't know why. Maybe it takes too much. I mean, they struggle to produce models, let alone terrain. Or they just...
It's just such a big part of the game, and like I said, they are kind of paying lip service to it, as you can get stuff on the website. The trees are back on the website at the moment as well, but they're just not going to get... They're not really getting in-game use. Yeah. And I think a lot of it boils down to, in terms of creativity, is how you want to play 40k. So like, because we play practice games for competitive, it's always going to be L's.
Yeah.
Unless we're like, we are not at a point where we're sick of competitive, but we want to explore other aspects of 40k.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think we're ready for like casual or narrative camp, like a crusade campaign or something. Yeah. And that will give us the opportunity, I think, to put some big centerpieces.
To branch out.
Really branch
so again,
out.
We've got a few names we want to mention about different YouTubers who do different things.
Yes.
But just before that, because you touched on it ever so slightly about how we can pick these up from the Games Workshop website. One point I want to bring up as well.
Oh, yes.
Why are they so expensive? They're crazy. The Tidewall for the Tau, that's £40.
Yeah.
Sure, okay. The Necron Convergence of Dominion, yes, this is technically a model, but it's also a fortification.
Yeah, it's the only time you ever seen it used is as terrain, isn't it?
As terrain, exactly. Yeah. That is, again, £40.
Yeah.
Not cheap. And then the Saint Celestine statue that I could find off eBay was £100, if not more.
Yeah, I think that comes from a set that's it's difficult to get. I mean, you can usually get 3D
prints
proxies, and these are not the same. They are inspired by... There is a guy I absolutely love who used to do, he was one half of the Warhammer podcast, Rich, and he has a company called ROK Minis. Go and find them they're on all social media, but also he's got a website.
Lovely.
But he has done some fantastic terrain that is not a copy, it is inspired by some of the old classic GW, like the big cathedrals and stuff like that. Yeah. It's really good. It's just definitely go and have, and it's much more affordable than the GW prices.
That is the key thing for me, because again, you look at those some terrain, you get like, I think like some terrain bits is like 60-70 quid for like 2 pieces. And you're like, don't get me wrong, they look amazing.
The new ruin they've done is like a corner piece, and it has got a bit more verticality to it than what they've done in the past.
Yeah.
But I think it's like you say, 70 quid or something, and you're just like, it's beautiful, but it's £70.
And then I haven't even painted my own models, let alone painting terrain. You know what I mean? So it's just
some of the GW terrain is beautiful, but perhaps a little. I mean. It boils down to what you're using it for again.
Yeah.
Like, I want my terrain to look good, but I want it to be painted.
Yeah.
But there's so much detail on some of it that you could spend a lot of time painting that, and that's not really where, again, we're talking about what you want. Similarly, I don't want MDF, the unpainted MDF terrain, just lifts you out of that immersion.
Yeah, it takes you out of it for sure.
You've got to find a happy medium.
Just spray it silver, no oil.
Yeah,
it's looking better.
Your absolute go-to.
Oh, now the Tooth & Coat's Oblivion.
Oh yeah, the Tooth & Coat's Oblivion Black Wash
so
is
better.
It is
so much better.
It's beautiful.
It's good to spice up my variety of paints I've got.
I know, yeah. But, it's not as tasty as Northern Oil.
It's like a bit more...
Yeah, slightly smoky aftertaste.
Yeah. Don't drink paints.
No. But no, I think that's a really good point. Like, to fill... When I first started, as everybody does, you assume that you can only buy from GW and that you need GW terrain. And it's an enormous amount of money to populate a table with GW terrain. We did a video about this a little while ago, didn't we?
I think sure we did, talking about terrain bits.
Yeah, where we did a video about how expensive it was to start for 40k, and part of that is about how much it would cost to buy a full table from GW. I'm sure it was like 500 quid or something.
It's like if not the same as an army.
Yeah, it was basically paying again. Yeah, it's too much.
It's sad.
So I fully agree with you on that one. I think as much as it is beautiful, I have to pick and choose which bits of GW terrain I buy.
Yeah.
Just
highly recommend a 3D print at that point.
Yeah.
Cheaper, more unique. Better.
Particularly if you're starting out or you're wanting like a second table's worth of terrain.
That's true.
Definitely.
Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. What about, can we change up without harming the balance?
Oh, that's a really interesting one. Yeah. I mean, why don't you go first on this? Because
Yeah, for sure. So for me, it's kind of like, I briefly mentioned it before, I would love for us all collectively to stick to at least some sort of guidelines. Like, I get, like, L-shaped ones are there for balance because it makes sense. Too much of it, you're going to favour more melee armies.
Yeah.
Too little of it, that's where you're going to see those shooting lines. So Tau and such.
Yeah, the shooting galleries are usually what happens is where you end up with those long firing lanes, and they can cause problems in games.
Absolutely. There's a couple of YouTubers out there that we kind of briefly mentioned before that really do really well.
Yeah.
We've talked about, I love these guys, 40k in 40 minutes.
Yeah, their tables are really thematic.
And again, from what I could see, again, I've not played on those tables, but if you want to invite us, I'll certainly come. But looking at it from a glance, it looks fair. It's even on both sides. It doesn't seem to be, there are some firing lines when the thing I like about it as well is that they highlight those areas when they're moving their models up. If they can just see a model, they'll get the angle. It's like, okay, cool. There are firing lines. Yeah. It's good to see. But on top of that, play on tabletop. Again, they do really good things. And mini wargaming as well. I follow them for ages.
Yeah, they're the OGs, but they're masters at setting up a good table.
Yeah. So I think all of them, do it really well.
Yeah, there's a few I want to mention. Winter's SEO. He's if you're not following Winters on YouTube, he should be. He does amazing battle reports, because what I love about his is he never does tournament setups. He might use L-shaped terrain, but he'll use it in a really interesting way.
Yeah.
But his terrain layouts are always very thematic.
Yeah.
Very immersive. But the standard of play is still so high that it doesn't impact the game.
Yeah.
So if the player, he's an amazing player, but the guys he gets on to play against him are always they're always good games, even if the terrain it does have firing lanes in it, and that can make a big difference. The two other ones I really wanted to give a shout out to are local heroes to us, which is our friend Sam, who runs Daily Dice.
Yeah.
His boards, he's occasionally using L-shaped terrain, but he's using it in
interesting creative ways.
Creative and interesting ways.
You got a little bit of sand and such and rocks around those L terrains.
Yes.
It almost like just doing that small trick just reduce that element of making them look like L-shaped terrain. If that makes sense.
It makes them look a bit more integrated to the boards, doesn't it? Yeah, which really helps.
I've been on his channel, so go check out the video. Go check out his channel.
Yes, great channel.
I won't spoil anything, but go watch.
I'll put a link in either in the description or a pinned comment, because the other one I wanted to give a shout out to is Sam's friend Big Rich, who has a channel called Warhammer. And again, his boards are always really immersive. He's got in particular a fantastic set of orc terrain. He builds a brilliant looking orc board. Yeah. His latest video's got orcs on it, and he popped up and had a chat with us about this when we'd put this out to the community, and he was saying that that is one of the big considerations is firing lanes. So you have to understand that a thematic board is going to enable more shooting and kind of build your lists and your game plan around that.
Exactly.
And so there are ways to do it if you are a good enough player. I'm not sure I am yet, I think, but it's partly that conditioning you talked about. Like if you just get into that habit of always playing on L-shaped terrain, I don't adapt to change very well. So if you put a different board in front of me, I'm like, oh, I don't. What's this? Yeah. Well, but you know what I mean, like, because whatever army you're playing, you get into your head like, right, this is the terrain layout. I've got a rough idea. I'm going to guess before deployment, you're going to put your stuff out. But my plan is therefore, like, my Doomsday Ark is going to go behind this bit of terrain. These guys are going to go on the home objective. These guys are going to go here because they're going to scout and stage up here, etc.
Exactly.
And when you put a different terrain set in front of me, I'm like, shit.
Like, my game plan that I had prepped is now out the window because the terrain is different, so it's not going to work on. So it completely changed. But, it's almost like an art form. Obviously, Rich was mentioning about like making sure that there wasn't as many or there is enough. It's an art form to get done.
There's another one I watched called Striking Scorpion, who does thematic, like, casual battle reports. But sometimes he also runs a league with his pals, which is quite interesting. Yeah. And but I remember watching a video a few months ago of his, and it was a beautifully laid out board. He'd actually done it with terrain that you can buy, which is like, I'm going to say this again, inspired by Dawn of War. So it's like the Dawn of War build, the buildings that you construct for the Space Marines and that. It's cool.
Yeah, like the stronghold.
It looked amazing. The board looked amazing, but I'm looking at the board like they do the pull out, zoom out shots, and I'm looking at he set up here, his pal set up here, and I'm going, whoever gets turn 1 here is just going to hammer the other one.
Man, it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah. And you can't. I think that's an example of where. And don't get me wrong, like he's amazing at battle reports, but that is an example of where it doesn't work. Like you can't mix and match. If you're going to do a themed board, you have to be prepared for a themed game. You can't run a competitive game on a themed board.
Like the theme is like on point, really immersive in that. But then I mean, there's. Again, it's got to iron things out, don't you? Maybe you try it. Does it work? No, right, let's try something different. So it's just that trial and error. But
it is. But I think all of those YouTubers demonstrate that you can, and that's one of the reasons why they're so popular, I guess, is because you can do more with terrain in those battle reports and still demonstrate you can still have a fun and balanced-ish game.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Completely agree. All really good things. I think this is the most people were shouted out on our podcast before.
Probably is actually, but there's a good
shout out to my mom.
Yeah.
Who doesn't watch the podcast.
Yeah. Well, why not?
Yeah, actually, hold on. I'm gonna get on it now.
Yeah, lack of support. That's outrageous. Yeah. But no, I mean, it's important to cite these people that give these examples, and I think it's fair, that these channels, some of those like Daily Dice and Warhammer in particular, pals of ours. We play games with them. We roll dice with these people. I want to give them a shout out.
Absolutely, worth it.
Good. On that note, any final thoughts from you about this?
Honestly, I thought it was a good talk. I think there's a lot of, obviously, I mean, the poll screams it. People want change. People want to be, I guess, involved in the hobby and kind of like they want to be immersed in the game. That's what's really missing right now.
The room to experiment a bit more.
Yeah. I think there's opportunity there for the next edition, but will they do it?
I would like to. I mean, the way it's going is they're trying to simplify the game because they're always trying to push that boundary back of to make it easier for people to come in.
Just eye walls.
Yeah. I mean, someone in the comments is saying they played a competitive game where the guy was like, "Do we need to set the terrain up? It must have been at a tournament, or can we just use like the outlines on the plastic? Sometimes you have like a clear plastic footprint of where the Ewing goes. No, just like let's just put the footprints down." He was like, "No."
You've kind of got to see it, kind of thing. That's weird.
I do think. Also,
that's boring again for me, anyways. If that was the case, I get for speed wise, but for me,
even at a tournament, you still want the ruins there, don't you?
I want to play. I want to be immersed.
And the other thing to say is there is a vast majority of you as well who are not competitive players and who shouldn't pay attention to this, I guess, in a way, like play 40k your way. Not don't pay attention to video, but don't pay attention to GW pushing you towards those L-shaped ruins. Our friend Simon from Rally Point was talking about he's building the terrain for like an abandoned mining complex at the moment, which has got like trees and rock art and buildings and stuff. And that's because he just plays once a month casually. So why not? That sounds amazing. I would love to play on that board.
As long as it's fair. I think that's the key thing, isn't it?
Again, it comes back to fairness.
So as long as there's like, I don't know,
or or you just have to accept that if you're playing, the reason you're playing casually once a month is because you want to see your friend and roll dice. And winning isn't, you're both winning as long as you're there. Who wins the game maybe isn't as important. But I just always feel like you don't want it to be too imbalanced one way or the other. Or just that just puts people off. I guess that's it. We would like to see a bit more variety in terrain. We understand why tournaments have to be what they are, but let's have some rules that enable us to play with our toys.
Absolutely. I think that's it for me. Perfect.
Good. All right. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. Let us know in the comments. If you haven't already, drop us a sub. That'd be great. The channel's growing fantastically well still at the moment, so we really appreciate that engagement. And in the meantime, thank you, and we'll be back soon with another podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.